Evening and welcome to Western Reiki Association presents Reiki Currents, a Reiki News Live Talkshow, bringing you interviews with Reiki wisdom holders and stories of hope and healing from around the world. I'm Stephen Vandiver, your host. The focus on Reiki is to spotlight one of the world's fastest growing self-care, spiritual, and personal development tools. Everyone can learn this calming, relaxing, and healing technique and channel universal life force energy. As we come to know that our universe and everything around us, including our physical bodies, is made entirely of energy, learning to effectively work with this energy is key. Reiki is a priceless addition to your personal spiritual development toolbox. Our guest tonight is Andrea Kennedy, Reiki Master Practitioner and Instructor and founder of Mainstream Reiki in Saline, Michigan. Her offices are located in the Center for Innovation and Education, run by Evangelical Homes of Michigan, which provides health and housing services to the elderly, as well as inpatient and outpatient services for the community. Andrea's mission is to make Reiki mainstream by providing treatments, Reiki classes, and education about Reiki and its uses within a medical setting. Beginning her Reiki journey in 1995, Andrea was at first very skeptical, but the results she received spoke volumes. Now, 23 years later, she is truly blazing a trail with Mainstream Reiki. Thank you for joining us tonight, Andrea. I appreciate you.
Oh, so good to be here with you, Stephen. Thanks for inviting me.
Excellent. Absolutely. I'd love to start out to hear, how did your journey to Reiki start?
Well, unexpectedly, for sure. I had gotten a physics degree. I went to Idaho State University and majored in physics with a health physics emphasis, which has to do with radiation and radiation protection and dosing. So I was always interested in how things work. So physics was kind of, a natural, interest for me. Mm-hmm. So I got a degree there, and not too much later than that, we had a visitor come up from Texas. My father's aunt, Eva, came up from Texas for a visit, and my husband and I went over to my dad and stepmother's house, and we're talking with her, and she was talking all about this thing called Reiki, which I had never heard of before. But gosh, she had fascinating stories about people and how they were affected by Reiki and all this positivity, and I was fascinated, really fascinated, and wanted to know more about it. So we talked, and then she even said that she could teach me during her visit. So actually, my husband was interested too. So we both learned Reiki 1 during her visit. And, I didn't know what to expect or anything. I remember the attunement was pleasant and relaxing, but that's about it. And then I didn't feel anything in my hands at all. I was so analytical, so in the vein of I have to see it to believe it kind of thing, like a scientist. Mm-hmm. I just felt nothing. But the incredible thing was when I would practice on my husband, he would tell me he could feel things, tingles or heat, things like that. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't figure that out. So I was hooked. I wanted to find out, what is this? How is this working? And it was really because of his feedback, that I stuck with it. Because had I not had that, I think I would have just thought this was all just, made up or something. But over time, I started to feel it. So that is how, I came to Reiki. Very unexpectedly, but many people say that Reiki finds them. Mm-hmm. And I would have to say that's really true in my case. So, gosh, that was back in 1995. So it's been quite a long time ago.
A little bit now. As having a science background, and as you got the positive feedback from your husband, did you try out any experiments, work up any spreadsheets, anything like that?
Not really, but later when I continued my training and completed Reiki 2, and even Master, what I did was I kept a file box, like a little, the recipe card box.
Mm-hmm.
I kept that, and everybody that I did distance healing with, because at that time I lived in Pennsylvania, so I didn't have family around. So I would keep a box, and everybody I knew had their own little section. So I was very organized with that, and each person in the section would have index cards, and I even just drew a stick figure for their body. But I would keep notes about any impressions I got and the dates and times that I sent it. And it was very, I would say it was a neat thing to do, because I could talk to the people afterwards, and they would give feedback that often correlated with the session. And I had those notes to go back to. So I always encourage my students to do something like that, and always keep a record.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's perfect, especially in a healthcare setting, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Now, you said, backing up just a little bit, after Reiki 1, you got some clarity from a trip to Egypt. Can you talk a little about that?
I did. Well, we were living in Pennsylvania at the time, and it was about 1998 or so. And I was a stay-at-home mom, and I had the TV on one afternoon, and Oprah was on. And Oprah had Carolyn Mace, the medical intuitive, on her show. And oh boy, that just fascinated me. I just thought that was the coolest thing. She would take someone's name and age, and that was it. And she would get all of this information about these people, this medical information. So I thought that was so incredible. And then the show was over, and that was it. Within a week's time, I went out and I got the mail one day, and in the mailbox was a postcard. It was a color postcard from a company I'd never heard of before called Power Places Tours. And it was an invitation to come to Egypt for a Carolyn Mace workshop on archetypes. I got that postcard in the mail within that week, as I said, and something just overtook me. I was so excited, and I said, I have to go. I have to go. I have to go. So my poor husband came home from work that day, and I just bombarded him. And I said, I got to go to Egypt. And he just thought I was nuts. I mean, I'd never been anywhere. I didn't have a passport, nothing. So in the end, my stepmom joined me, and we actually went to Egypt together for this workshop, trip of a lifetime. And they had different events for us to do. We got to go through the Great Pyramid and different things. It was really a fascinating trip. And one morning we were doing a meditation at the Sphinx, and each of us got to go individually between the legs of the Sphinx. And it was very quiet and meditative. And, back then I didn't meditate or, anything. And, but I went there in the silence. And it just kind of occurred to me in a very distinct way in my mind that I needed to come back and finish my Reiki training. I didn't know why or how or anything. It just was very clear that that's what I needed to do. So that's what I did. I came home from Egypt, and I contacted Aunt Eva, and I went back to Texas where she lived, and I completed my training with her then. Again, I didn't know why, but I just was very sure that that was the next step for me. So that's what I did.
There you go. And then you got your Reiki Master shortly after visiting Aunt Eva again. And where did you go?
As a matter of fact, what I did was a little unconventional. And because she was down there and I knew no other Reiki people, I actually did 2 and my master level very close together on the same trip, actually. So I don't teach it that way now, but you do what you need to do and what you're called to do. So I did. It was about a week to 10 days that I spent down there with her, doing all the training and learning all that I could.
And getting all the attunements. That's great. Now, fast forward a little bit, 2006, you were volunteering at a veterinarian's office.
Yes. So in 2006, I had, again, this, I guess I would say, this knowing that it would be very good to repeat my master training in 2006. And we were living in Idaho at the time. And so I went over to Portland and took William Moran's class that he was holding in Portland in 2006. And it was the ART master training, the 3-day. And it was very powerful. And I felt a lot of, we say shifts and all that, in the energy world. But I felt quite different. I felt like a lot happened, but I wasn't quite sure what it was. And then I came back home to Idaho, or I went back home to Idaho, and I just kept thinking about animals and that I would love to volunteer and help animals. So after that nagging feeling was just so loud and obvious to me after some time, I put a packet together for my veterinarians. We had 2 dogs. So I thought, what better place to start? So I put a packet about Reiki together in a letter, and I approached them and asked if I could volunteer and do Reiki there. And they said yes. So that was quite a trip, to say the least. So what I found out rather quickly was I could actually communicate with the animals, which I had never set out to do. And here in my science mind, I think I figured other people could do things like that. It fascinated me, but I was quite taken aback that I could do that. So that was a whole nother learning curve for me, because I didn't have a teacher or a guide to help me figure all that out and how to do it. But it worked. It worked well. And you just can't make this stuff up, quite frankly. So it was very fun.
Right now, this is very fascinating to me as well. So how do you communicate? So do you hear, or do you just feel their feelings? How do you communicate with them?
Well, actually, it's kind of in different ways. So sometimes I would actually hear as though they were talking to me, like from their, from them directly, as if words were coming from them, but not like an out loud voice, just within me, but it was from their perspective. But most of the time, it's more like a knowing, as though someone has told me the information, but I have no memory of hearing it or reading it or anything. It's just kind of in my mind.
It just comes to you.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And then what I found is I sort of have, it's kind of like a barometer somehow in me. And so if I get information and then I ask about it or I feel it, I can feel if it's accurate or not. I don't know if that makes sense, but there's an off feeling if it's not quite right. And then there's a right on, light up, big, clear feeling if I'm on track with it.
Wow.
And that's how I work today with my Reiki clients, my people clients. It's that same sort of way, kind of feeling in my body, the truth of what I'm trying to convey to them.
Yeah, really in touch with your intuition. Yeah, that's beautiful. So, so now you are a SUI, Holy Fire 2 art Master Reiki teacher practitioner, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Great. So now, was that with the training you did with William Lee Rand in Portland?
Back at that time in 2006, it was Usui Reiki Ryoho, and we used the Tibetan symbols as well. But now I do Holy Fire 2, which I believe, my first Holy Fire class was in March 2015. And then that was Holy Fire. And then About a year later, I completed Holy Fire 2, which with that course, the attunement process became so streamlined that it's super exciting as a teacher and as a practitioner and really just a person, here on the planet, because it's so simple to do that more and more people, I feel, will be teaching it. Therefore, more and more people will be learning it. And that's what we need. Yeah,
that's the main thing. So now you had, the Usui Tibetan prior to, and then now with the Holy Fire 2. What do you notice in the difference between the energies? Anything there?
Yeah, I would say as a practitioner, especially because I'm still skeptical. I'm going to admit it to you right now. I'm still so skeptical about all this. And I do sessions and I'm in awe and wonder about this thing called Reiki. I mean, every day it just really, it's undeniable to me. And I just I have to say, I do keep questioning it over and over and over. But I would say for me, it's clearer to me, is what I will say. It's clearer to me in what people say as far as their feelings in the session seem to be more pronounced, as well as the results that they're feeling and seeing in their own lives seem to be clearer to me than years ago. So I do attribute that to the Holy Fire. I do believe that Reiki does evolve, as Usui also stated. I do think that is true, at least from what I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. Now, talk a little bit about the center. Let's see, what do we have? The Center for, I lost my notes, sorry.
Innovation and Education.
Yes. Yeah. And this is actually, now you have your office inside this medical facility. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that came about?
Absolutely. So my husband and I and our two sons came to Michigan in 2015, and I hadn't practiced Reiki professionally for some time because, we've moved around for my husband's job. And when we moved here, I really inside said, enough is enough. It is time. I've got to get back out there and live my mission. And so we got settled. And so in the spring of 2016, I had met a local chiropractor in town. And actually, they had offered massage there. And a family member of mine was going and getting some massage there regularly for a health issue. And Dr. Rob Borer, this chiropractor, informed me, well, our massage therapist has given her notice, so we're going to need to find another one, but we'll let you know when we do. And I said, well, if you ever want to offer Reiki in your office, let me know. And he got a grin on his face, a little smile, and he said, I think I've heard of that. What is it? So I explained it to him, and he kind of nodded and said, I'll think about that. Well, one thing led to another. And so in the spring of 2016, I started seeing clients right there in the chiropractic office. Because they're not seeing patients there, all day, every day. So they had some hours that were open. So I was able to utilize their office to begin my practice. I did that for over a year, and, I needed more time. I needed to open my schedule up more because I had demand. And so they couldn't accommodate me there. So I started to look for office space in town. And I actually had already started teaching at the Center for Innovation and Education. this facility used to be a small local hospital here in town, St. Joe's, that had closed a couple of years prior, and Evangelical Homes of Michigan bought the facility. At that time, when I first started teaching there, a whole side of the building was pretty empty. The other side housed hospice, occupational therapy, short-term rehab, and even long-term care. So that whole side of the building had been remodeled and filled in, but they had all these other offices. And so when I was teaching my classes, I would kind of go wander the halls and, look around and think, this could be a really neat space for me. So when I called the lady who helps me rent the room for my classes and talked to her and said, hey, are you all going to lease any of these offices? And she said, oh, well, let me put you in touch with the CEO. And one thing, led to another. And I got my office there last September. And they've been fabulous, absolutely fantastic. I have a waiting room all to myself and my clients. And then right next door is my treatment room, because many people will bring a friend or a family member and they'll do back-to-back sessions. So this gives the person waiting a nice place to hang out, and they have Wi-Fi and tea and bottled water and just a nice place to hang out. But it's such a neat facility. And since I moved in, all those offices have filled up. So they have put in the home health care, nursing staff has an office there. All the Evangelical Homes of Michigan Board of Directors have moved into that wing. And it's just a neat place to be. Right now, they're remodeling a section near me to put in an outpatient physical therapy unit so that the community will come in there and actually be helped as well. So they're very focused on wellness and prevention. They're putting in a test kitchen also, and they're going to teach nutritional classes. So Reiki is such a perfect fit there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, do you receive any referrals from the organization?
Not formally. No, not formally. So I've had their staff come by, and many of them have said, oh yeah, let me get your brochure because I'm sending my husband, or, that kind of thing. So I get that kind of referral, and people stopping by my office to ask, what is this? What are you doing? But what is really, I think, exciting too, is the facility itself has had a massage therapy office there. And they actually have a person on staff that also does Reiki treatments right there. And, and they welcomed me with open arms as an independent Reiki practitioner. So, they're seeing a demand for this. And this, the practitioner there goes and visits the inpatients there and is also developing wellness events for the residents and rehab patients that come in as well. So it's just a real exciting time to be involved with Reiki. And as the more people hear about it and see results, it's just so gratifying and humbling at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Reiki in the medical facilities and hospitals and care homes and such, it's really grown by leaps and bounds. And so how does this fit into Mainstream Reiki?
Well, I started Mainstream Reiki when I lived in Buffalo. That was our last stop before Michigan. And I knew Buffalo would be temporary. So I was volunteering there through Roswell Park Cancer Institute. I was volunteering there, and I also attended Reiki shares and kind of kept active in the Reiki community. but I wanted to do more, but I just knew we weren't going to stay there. And I couldn't bear establishing a practice, a professional practice, and then leaving it again, as I had done in Idaho. That was very difficult to do. So instead, I went out on social media and I started a page on Facebook called Mainstream Reiki. And I did a little website for myself. It was something that I could invest in that was Reiki. And the whole mission of Mainstream Reiki at that time, which it still continues today, is to help Reiki be known more in mainstream circles with mainstream people. You know, I'm just a regular person. I mean, I'm a science person. You know, I'm just a regular person. When I first learned Reiki and for years after, you know, it's been associated with New Age and that kind of thing. And that's fine. But I want Reiki to be known by more people. I want Reiki to be welcomed in mainstream medical offices with mainstream people of all walks of life to know what it is. And they can make up their own minds about it. But unless they try it, unless they know about it, you know, then Reiki has no chance of going to those areas. So Mainstream Reiki is all about shining a light on Reiki and letting people know that it is a mainstream modality, that it's a complementary therapy to all medical practices and procedures. And it's not just relegated to New Age people or the fringe. It's really out there. And so many facilities offer it now. So the Mainstream Reiki page has grown quite a bit over the last few years. Mm-hmm. And my goal there isn't really to promote my personal business that I call Mainstream Reiki as well. It's Mainstream Reiki on Facebook is really about putting out information, articles, and highlighting Reiki programs in mainstream places like hospice, doctors who have it in their offices, hospitals, things like this, news publications that do articles on Reiki. I put that out there in hopes that other Reiki people will share those stories and spread those stories and just help publicize Reiki. And as I said earlier, allow more people to just know it's there, consider it, and perhaps try it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Now, in building your business, you know, how do you focus on that? And I just can imagine, you know, going in, having conversations with maybe hospital administrators, you know, things mm-hmm. like this, that you need to have a certain language
right.
You know, to communicate here. Do you have any advice for Reiki practitioners out there looking to break into hospitals and whatnot?
Right. Well, you know, I've done 2 businesses so far that have been successful, one in Idaho and one here in Saline. And, you know, I would say overall, for me, what has worked is just maintaining a professional type attitude. You know, when I go into work, I do this work because it's not work to me, but when I go into that place where I see clients, you know, I'm a professional. And if people see me in the halls, I just look like any of the other people there. When people ask me about Reiki, I have a nice short blurb that I tell them about Reiki, because oftentimes people will, us Reiki people, we love Reiki for so many different reasons. It's hard for many of us to boil it all down to something simple. And often we stumble when people ask us, well, what is that Reiki thing you do or whatever? And so I think it's really important to have something short and sweet to tell them about Reiki that is clear. But if they want to know more, then they can ask more, and then you can tell them more. But to just be clear and forthcoming with it and demystify it for them in about 30 seconds or less, I think that that's really important. But the other thing I'm going to say is to be client focused is important. So when I first started out in Idaho, I was a volunteer, and a lot of the animals I saw right at first were actually animals that belonged to the staff at the clinic. So they would bring their animals in, and then word spread, and I got more and more people from the community coming in. And then it was actually the veterinarians that said to me, we think you need to start charging money for this. So, that was neat. So I did that, and then more people came, and then the people said to me, well, don't you see people? So then I thought, oh gosh, I'm going to have to figure this out because I can't see people at the veterinarian clinic. So I got a little office for that. And then soon after, people said, well, don't you teach classes? So then I figured that out too. So for me, it's been very organic, but I think that remaining focused on each and every session, each and every client, and having that be the main, I guess I just keep using the word focus, but I think that that's important because, it's an honor for me. Every single session I have, I just feel honored to be blessed with that person's presence or that animal's presence and the opportunity to perhaps help someone else through Reiki. But I think in doing that, it speaks volumes, and I think it's translated to the other people that you talk to. In healthcare, that's why they get into healthcare too. They want to help people. So we have that in common. So I don't think there's anything magical about it. I think when you boil it down to that common denominator, and when you're clear about how Reiki is a complementary therapy, there's no competition in that. It's like we all just really have the same goal. And so when you talk and communicate in that way and boil it down to that, I think that goes a long way.
Absolutely. Now, when you do talk to people about Reiki, maybe for the first time or whatever, do you focus more on the self-care aspect of it, or the ability to provide Reiki treatments for others? What's your initial approach?
Well, I usually keep it general at first, and I would say if somebody says, well, what is Reiki? I would say something like, oh, it's a Japanese technique that greatly reduces stress and supports the body's own healing abilities. So that would be my one little sentence type answer there. And then if they ask more, then I will, explain more. I might talk about the nervous system and how under stress the cells undergo physiological changes with stress hormones, and through Reiki we see a shift into the rest and restore mode. I might talk about that, and medical people kind of like that. So it kind of depends on my audience as well. And in the office, if I'm seeing a client and they're asking me more about Reiki at the end of the session, I often will bring in the self-care aspect at that point, because they're there for a reason. They want help. And, for someone to learn Reiki, that is such an incredible tool that they can feel empowered with that as well if they learn it, because they're really taking an active role in their own wellness.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. Now, you've read a number of books. I'm really curious about this. I read this in your bio. Books about spiritual and healing subjects. I'd love to hear, what some of your top books are.
Oh gosh, there's so many. Okay, so I would say Bruce Lipton's Biology of Belief. I like that one. I just don't think the rules have to apply to us. So that's one of the things that book taught me. Just because things happen to most people as we age or whatever it is, doesn't mean it has to happen to me or you or anything else. So I think that our genetics and our futures are very much still being created. So I just don't think that we're so locked into a lot of those limiting beliefs that we get trained in tapping into. Another one I would say would be Anita Moorjani's Dying to Be Me. that was fascinating. She talks about her near-death experience after stage 4 cancer, and so many wonderful lessons in that book. It was hard to put down. And the analogies she uses are just, I love them. I just love analogies. That's just one of my quirks, I guess. But very fascinating book, beautiful message. Love that. But, probably the books that really stick out to me at the very beginning, when I was first, I would say probably between my Reiki 1 training and my trip to Egypt and all of that, it was the Conversation with God series 1, 2, and 3. And I remember that those pushed my envelope just so hard because, it made me question everything I believed spiritually. And I think that's so good because it helps you know what you believe, why, and it helps you question yourself. Why do I believe that? Why do I think that that's true? And it's through the contrast of reading a book like that or a series of books like that that we can grow and know ourselves better by the introduction of these challenging sort of ideas. So that was a real changer for me, those books. Yeah, for sure.
Very nice. Very nice. Now, this all reminds me, I always think of this, doing Reiki, and as a kid, just loving superheroes and wanting to be a superhero. And you mentioned a little about that the other day. Could you talk about that a bit?
I don't know. What did I say about superheroes?
Well, you said that you, as a child, you liked the superheroes on TV.
Oh, gosh. I don't know.
Growing up with heroes on TV shows.
Heroes on TV shows. Yeah, I don't know, Stephen. I don't know.
Okay.
I remember we talked a little bit where I said I loved the shows about the Bermuda Triangle on TV, and That's Incredible, and Ripley's Believe It or Not
right, those kind of
on
shows.
TV. Yeah, because I wanted to know all the answers and the magic. Whenever they would have magic shows or people doing magic on TV, I just wanted the answers. It's like, forget all of this, just tell me how you did the trick. But so I don't know. I'm drawing a blank on the superheroes.
Well, I might have superimposed that aspect into
yes,
because that's what kind of resonated for me.
Yeah,
so talk a little bit more about that. How that kind of early influence and what did that drive in you?
It's funny. I have a memory. I probably was about, I want to say around 8. And I remember it very vividly. I was in my bedroom and I just had this feeling that this was the time to be alive. Isn't that an odd thing? I just had this knowing that this is the lifetime that I was going to see so much, that there was going to be such a change. I was going to witness some amazing things. And it's such an odd thing, I think for a 7 or 8 year old to think, and I'm going to say not even think, but occur. And I use that word a lot, like at the Sphinx, it occurred to me, I need to go do my Reiki training. Well, it was way back then. It occurred to me that this was the time to be alive. And, with all the changes in our country and the world right now, I just feel like, maybe this was part of what I felt way back then, because I think that we are really witnessing a lot of changes in the world, a lot of changes in our collective consciousness. And I think that this is a real turning point for us. But going back there to my childhood and seeing these shows in the Bermuda Triangle and all of that, that fascination, like with ESP and all that, it did really open up this whole questioning for me of wanting to know more. I wanted to know the answers. So when Aunt Eva came to visit that time up in Idaho, and she started talking about this Reiki thing, it kind of hooked back into that. And I thought, what is this? I want to know what this is. Tell me more about it. I wanted to know the answers. So it all hooks into that. And I'll go a step further and say, after I came home from my second level ART master, after I came home, I started doing my distance healing with my little recipe box of cards. And that's when the intuition started to kick in for me. And I had some really very validating experiences with that, where I got feedback and it matched exactly what I saw or knew as I did the distance Reiki. And I have to say, that's what really spurred me on. And so then I started to take classes with, how to see an aura, or psychic development or ESP. That I started delving into those things. Chakras, what are they for? All of that. So Reiki led me there. I've also done other classes and other modalities and things, but I have to say, I really don't talk much about the other things that I do, because I think Reiki's enough. And I want to, in my own practice, in my mission about Mainstream Reiki, I want to be very focused on Reiki and not be distracted or distract clients or, people I approach in healthcare. I don't want to distract from Reiki in my message. So, but I have done a lot of other trainings. Reiki to me it goes with everything. And it really doesn't need anything else to go along with it. Although a lot of practitioners do add to Reiki, and I think that's great. It's just for me and my focus. I just really hone in on the Reiki.
Absolutely. Now, you were saying, this was kind of early on and being skeptical and still skeptical.
Yes.
But with regard to like healing stories, can you share some healing stories with us that you experienced that, say, wow, this thing is real?
Well, I'll give you I'll take you back to an animal story, and then I can tell you a people story. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. So one of my favorite animal stories is Patty. Patty, she was a black Pomeranian, and my friend Lori had rescued her, and she was a little bit older dog, and she worked at the veterinarian's office, and she brought Patty in, and she asked me to work with Patty because Patty was upset, to say the least, whenever Lori would want to wash her face. She would get eye discharge, and Lori would want to clean her, and Patty would just get so upset, snarly, and she'd even get so upset that she might lose control of her bowels or bladder. That's how upset she would get.
Wow.
So Lori asked me, well, see what you can do. So I sat with Patty, and it's one of my favorite stories because it's probably about the first time that I realized that there was more going on than just the Reiki, and it was this communication. So as I sat with Patty, it occurred to me, I'm going to use the word occurred again, you see that? It occurred to me that Patty was upset because what Lori was using to wash her face, the cloth, was not her color. And I thought, what? Well, Patty was black, and she did not. All I knew was it's not my color. Is how it came through. It's not my color. So I thought, this is really crazy. Again, I didn't know what I was doing at the time. So I kind of spoke with Patty, and I let her know that the reason that Lori wanted to wash her face was to keep her healthy and pretty and clean as pretty and, pretty Patty. And Patty seemed to kind of like that idea. She bought into the pretty Patty idea, but not my color. She just did not, there was something there. So I went back to Lori, thought I was crazy, but I went back to Lori and had to tell her this. And she, we just had a chuckle about it. And that was about it. So a couple days later, I see Lori, and she had gone out and bought a black cloth. No problems washing her face anymore. So it was just such a turnaround for this dog. And that's all it was. She just changed the color of the cloth. And of course, a little Reiki along the way for sure, but a little understanding there. So yeah, very neat. Dogs, I've always had dogs in my life. So dogs were kind of, I'm going to say easy for me, but cats are just like alien creatures to me. I mean,
I think they are from outer space.
Yeah. I mean, they just are so different than dogs. Yeah. So, a quick cat story is that I had a woman come in with her cat, and she said that all of a sudden the cat would only pay attention to her and not her daughter or her husband. And it was really bothering them. And so that's why she brought her cat. So I sit with the cat, offer the cat Reiki, and in my mind's eye, they're slamming doors and yelling at their home, and saying, and I get this information from this cat that the husband or father and the daughter have been fighting with each other. And the cat decided that the cat would not give either the daughter or the dad any attention whatsoever, because the cat thought it was so petty and just a complete waste of time that they were arguing. And the cat felt if he gave any attention to them, it would be validating to this petty feud that they were having.
Wow, that's one wise cat.
Yeah, isn't it crazy? Wow. So from my perspective, I'm thinking, how am I going to say this to this woman who comes back, right? Are they fighting? I see slamming doors. So as a practitioner, you're kind of in a unique, kind of odd spot. But I've always been of the, I guess I've made up my mind that if it comes through and, I'm going to share it with them. So she came back and I told her what I had seen and heard and communicated with the cat. And she said, absolutely, that was 100% what was going on.
Wow.
In the household, that they had been fighting. And, and as I said earlier, way in the early part of the show, you just can't make this stuff up. So it was really incredible. So fast forward, now I don't see too many animals. I think that I think that it's time for me to really focus on people. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm doing. I still do a little bit of animal work, but not too much. So I had a gentleman come in, and he came in, I don't know, about 8 months ago. But he came in for anxiety and depression. And his mother in Kentucky, I'm in Michigan. His mother in Kentucky knew about Reiki, and she said, you go find a Reiki person. So that's how he found me. He Googled Reiki in the area and found me, but his mother knew all about Reiki. So he came in for anxiety and depression. And during the first session, I was seated at the head of the table and he was on his back. And when I placed my hands on his shoulders, shock absorber entered my mind, shock absorber. And I asked, what is that about? And it occurred to me that he served as a shock absorber in his life, so that any unrest or negative feelings or anything that wasn't peaceful, he took that in himself. He was trying to smooth everything out for everyone else around him. And it was very disruptive for himself. You know, it was a difficult way to be. So we had the first session, you know, and I told him that, and he said absolutely, that he said that that's how it is for him at work. And the funny thing was, is I'm in Michigan, he works for an automotive company, and I got shock absorber, you know, so it kind of fit him, right? So anyway, when I do a session, I always kind of feel or ask Reiki, I guess, what would be good for this person as far as coming back for repeated visits. He came 4 times over the course of about 6 weeks. And every time it was like he was a new person, and he got better and better. And so by the 3rd visit, he came in and he said that he was really surprised and quite shocked at how he was going with the flow in his life, that he had an upset where he was counting on something and it fell through for him. And he said he realized in his reaction to that something in him had really healed, because he said 3 months ago, had it happened, he would have been devastated. He said since we had started Reiki, and since he'd been coming, then this happened to him. He just pretty much shrugged his shoulders and said, wow, I guess I'm not going to be doing that. You know, he said he couldn't believe it. It was almost, he had this awareness about himself that he hadn't had before, but he also was able to recognize his ability to handle the unexpected and the big disappointment in a way that he said that he would never have been able to handle it before. So he credited those 4 sessions with completely turning his life around, and his quality of life completely changed.
Wow. Very, very transformative. That's amazing. That's an amazing story. So where do you see your business, Mainstream Reiki? You know, where's that headed? Where do you see yourself in, you know, say 5 years?
I don't know, Stephen. Yeah, I don't know. How I do things and how I've always done things with Reiki is I just try and focus right in front of me, because I know if I do that well, I have more options come up. So I just really try to do that. If I have a dream for Mainstream Reiki, if I have a dream for myself, I would love to be full-time at a healthcare facility offering Reiki, and then perhaps even developing a Reiki program in the facility where I could administer the program. You know, that would be my dream, to do that.
Wow, yeah, that's beautiful, and it's growing. You know, it's growing so much. Now, when you're teaching there at the center, are you teaching a lot of the healthcare workers?
Not yet. So I do offer continuing education credits. So I've had 2 to 3, I think 3 social workers now come through, and I've got my next class. I've got 2 nurses that are interested in coming to the next class. They had just contacted me last week. So I think it's moving in that direction. And now with all the nursing in those offices being filled up in my side of the building now, and them knowing I'm there, I think that'll help. But I am seeing an uptick in healthcare people interested in the classes, which is super exciting. I just actually had a client last week who is a pediatric nurse at Hospital, Children's Hospital in Ann Arbor. And, about a month ago, I had an actual doctor come in. So I've had a few doctors, I've had a few nurses as clients that were very, I'm going to say, intrigued with this thing called Reiki and had very moving experiences there in their sessions. So it's exciting.
Now, have some of these folks ended up in your class, or do you anticipate that?
I anticipate that, yes. So they've talked to me about it afterward. So, yeah. My next class is in July, so we'll see.
Okay, see how that goes. Now, one thing that I thought of is that there may be a need for like private Reiki training. Like maybe some folks don't want to necessarily come into a group with other unknown people from the beginning, or maybe they have a family and they just want you to come into their house. Do you get any requests like that?
I actually have a client who lives in Germany, believe it or not. And she was referred to me by a friend here, her friend who lives here, who came to me. She heard about me. So when she came home, I think it was last summer, she came in for a session and just loved it. So she came in to town again over Christmas. And so I just did a private class for her because that was when she was in town. So I am going to go actually to Idaho this summer. As we talked about, I had a practice there. So 10 years ago, I taught my last class there. It was a master class 10 years ago. And that was Usui Reiki back then. And so now I can offer Holy Fire too. So I decided to offer a class back in Idaho and invite all my old students if they want to come, and new people if they want to come too. So I'm excited about that. That's in July. So I'm going to go back there and offer that class and reconnect with some wonderful people out there.
There you go. Now, do you have a venue set up, or do you have family or friends there that you'll have the class at?
There's a woman out there who has, she has a large property and a beautiful garden out there and horses. And so we've decided we're going to hold it there at her, I guess her home, but also her facility. And with the weather out there in July, I'm hoping maybe we can do some practicing outside in the garden.
Oh, that'd be lovely. Lovely.
Yes.
Yeah, I love going on walks like lunch break during Reiki classes. So that's really good.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So can we get you have some dogs around. Can we get the dogs in? Can we get them on camera real quick? Say hi to the dogs?
I don't know. I guess we can try.
Let's try. Let's see if we can get some animals on.
Okay. Hold on.
Okay. Thanks for your patience, everyone. I should look at setting this up ahead of time. Note for the future. It was a few weeks back, maybe a month ago or so, one of our guests brought their dog on. So thanks for your patience. A couple of minutes, we're winding down the show.
Come on. Come here.
Here, we got some dogs.
I don't know. They're in my wires, Stephen. So here's Frida.
Hey, Frida. Hey, Frida.
Yes. She's a hound dog. She's a hound mix. She likes... There's Sandy. And Sandy's over there. Sandy!
Is Sandy a tiny dog?
No, they're both big. They're about 60 pounds each.
Oh, okay. Okay. You like big dogs.
Yes. Come here, Sandy. Oh,
so now, how long have you had these dogs? Hey, Sandy.
Sandy was, about 2006. Yeah. So she's from Pocatello, Idaho.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, and Frida's younger. She's from Buffalo.
Okay. So now, do the dogs know that, knowing that they can communicate with you, are they like always asking for stuff and wanting to go places?
Oh, For me, it's harder when it's my own dogs because I'm so emotionally involved with them.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little bit, I don't know if I want to know a lot. So, but I tell you what, anytime I do Reiki in the house, whether I'm doing a distance session or I have a table here at home as well, as in my office. So if I do a session on my husband or one of my kids or something, the dogs are in there. I mean, I don't care what they're doing. They come in there and they lay right down. They just know, and they love the energy. So many animals do.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Andrea. I really appreciate you. It was an amazing show. You're a bright, shiny star, and definitely want to hear more about Mainstream Reiki in the near future. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We'll be back next Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific with Dr. Ann Baldwin, scientist. So we're on our science trek here.
We are.
So thank you all. Namaste.
Thank you, Stephen.
You're welcome.